Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I give you an end of April garden tour. So let's go. I'm really looking forward to sharing my yard with you, so grab a coffee or your favorite beverage, sit back and relax and enjoy the tour. At the base of my driveway, the forsythia is in full bloom. And not only that, you can see I have small patches of daffodils blooming as well. I just want anyone that enters my home to feel spring. I want them to see spring, and I want them to see all the beautiful colors as they're coming up my driveway. So let us head up my driveway. I want you to feel like you're welcome back to my home. You're coming back for a visit, and we're going to take a garden tour here. When it comes to the daffodils, I'm going to continue adding more along my driveway. I just love listening to the birds in the morning. It's just so beautiful to be out here with nature. One thing I want to share is these daffodils have only been planted here a few years. So they are just now starting to put on a great show. And my hope is to add some of the darker yellow daffodils up along my driveway to complement these lighter colored daffodils. I want you to peek through the woods and see what's next, what's around the corner. I love this flower bed. This flower bed is what I call the driveway flower bed. It's right next to the driveway, and there are so many different daffodils in here, lots of different colors. Aren't they so sweet? And I love the way that they look next to the glory of the snow. Many times I have the same kind of daffodils in certain areas, but this particular bed, there's a whole mix of different ones. And I really am enjoying them. I like that it's a little bit whimsical. It's early morning here, and everyone's waking up. The glory of the snow have really put on a great show this year. I've really been enjoying them, and it's probably another week and they'll start going by as well. As you peek over from the driveway flower bed, you can see that there is a lot of color in the distance there. I'll bring you over there in a little while. Let's keep going up the driveway. So as we're heading up the driveway, on the right-hand side, this is where I have my plant nursery. It's been a good year so far. Things are picking up, and it's still very early in the season. I have a whole playlist that goes over my plant nursery. I'll link that down below. This will be my third year selling plants from home, and I really have enjoyed it. On the south side of my house, I have a flower bed that I call the side walkway bed, and it is looking so pretty. You can see that the daffodils are really in their glory right now. I'm truly enjoying them. This time of year, I'm paying a lot of attention to when different plants bloom, so that as soon as a plant goes by, then I know what other plants to plant in certain flower beds. I love how the Muscari or Grape Hyacinth looks next to the yellow of the daffodils. And I am enjoying the glory of the snow. the light purple color flowers you see there. I think all those colors complement very nicely in this one area. And then there's some pink also, and I really am trying to just get a lot of different colors going in this one flower bed. The hyacinths are absolutely gorgeous this time of year. I love the purples, I love the pinks, just so pretty. The pink corydalis, or fumwort, is still looking pretty, but it is starting to go by. And the little white flowers that are closed up right now, those are bloodroot, and they will open later in the day. I'll pop up on the screen what they looked like yesterday when they were blooming. They only bloom for 1 week, maybe 2 weeks, but they are so worth having in the garden, I feel. I love hyacinth so much that you can see I have the purple colored hyacinth on both sides of the rock. I just enjoy the scent of hyacinth. I enjoy its structure, the way it looks, its bold color, just such a beautiful plant. This is the south side of my house here, and there are a number of things going on. So as we leave the plant nursery and we keep going up the driveway, I like to call this the long flower border because it really is a very long, somewhat narrow flower bed. It starts off as a much wider flower bed, but then it eventually becomes narrow. The hydrangea here in the center was recently cut back hard, but look at the daffodils that surround that hydrangea. I'm so glad we cleaned around that hydrangea, just to let those daffodils breathe and shine. There are a few things that are awake in this flower bed, and one of them is the fringed bleeding heart. I love this bleeding heart. You'll hear me talk about it often. It's all budded up right now, and it's going to bloom spring, summer, through fall. It does well in shade, and here in New Hampshire, it even does well in sun. And doesn't it look just so striking next to all those daffodils? I have a few patches of the fringed bleeding heart. They usually come in a few colors. You'll often find them in a pink color or a white color, and I have both. I just love the leaves on them. And then the blooms are also just so dainty, so pretty. Here's another angle of the daffodils. And I am loving the color combination that we see right here. We have more of the pink fumwort, which is a spring type of bulb, but then we also have the lungwort. It's funny, two different plants that end in the word wart. Lungwort, also known as pulmonaria, is just such a striking plant. I love it not only for the blooms, but even for the leaves. And what will happen is, as the blooms fade, the leaves actually get more prominent. They get larger, and in fact, all of the spots that you see on there get more prominent as well. I do like to plant things in mass, and the way I'm able to do that is by constantly dividing my plants. I feel that dividing plants saves a lot of money and makes a big impact in our gardens. You'll notice that the daffodils in the background there are blooming, and yet the daffodils towards the foreground are still budded up. And that's because they are a different kind of daffodil. The beautiful thing about daffodils is there are so many different kinds out there in terms of the way they look. And there are also different ones that bloom at different times during the spring. So these clearly bloom later on in the spring. This flower bed has many repeating plants, and the white plants that you see here are bloodroot. You can see they're closed up still because it's early in the morning, but look at the leaf structure on them. It's a very interesting woodland type of plant. We're going to head this way in the flower bed. And the one thing I want to point out here is we have a plant that's waking up. This is also a bleeding heart, but this is the old-fashioned bleeding heart. I will definitely show you it when it's in bloom. I have it in a few places in my yard. I want to just step back so you can really take in what you see in this flower bed. There are a ton of peonies that are just waking up. And eventually, those will bloom once a lot of these spring plants that you see go by. And this is what I meant by a long border. It really is a very long, somewhat narrow flower bed, especially on this side of the flower bed. Let's head down this way. I want to show you what's going on down here. A couple of things. A couple of projects that I'm planning to work on in this area, which I'm very excited about. You can see here where the lawn ends and the gravel begins. I basically feel like it's a separate flower bed. Even though they're right near each other, I feel like they're a little different. So let me talk about some changes I want to make this year. We recently cut back the hydrangea that are in this bed pretty hard, and that exposed a lot of the plants that were beneath it. And that got me thinking that I need to make a few small changes in this flower bed. I like to repeat patterns when I go from one bed to another. So certain plants will stay. For example, the daffodils will stay in here, as well as the daylilies, and even the pulmonaria. But let me show you some things I want to add or change. That plant right there is Stella d'Oro daylily. And you can see the spacing over in that flower bed. But as we come this way, the spacing is a little more frequent. So I'm planning to take out every other daylily. That's what I had done in the long border, and I never got to it on this side. So I'll come in here on a different day and take out every other daylily, just so that they're spaced the same as in the other flower bed. We're now looking at the end of this flower bed where the daffodils are, and you'll notice that there's a big gap right here. So I need to add one more grouping of the daffodils where there's a gap. So I'm just going to pull from one of these big clumps that are here and just divide it down a little bit. And of course I'll wait until the blooms have gone by, and then I can start dividing. I have 3 hydrangeas in this bed, and I'm pointing to 2 of the ones that you see here. And then as we move down, there is a gap. And then as we continue moving down, here's another hydrangea. So what I'm planning to do is I'm going to add a hydrangea right here where there's a gap. And what will end up happening is there will be a pattern of alternating types of hydrangeas. Be on the lookout for that in a future video, but I'm very excited about that as well. There are a number of bridal wreath spirea that are in this flower bed. They are just starting to leaf out, and in fact they're also starting to bud up. There is a lot of work to be done in this area here. I have a number of raised beds that I need to tend to, and I can bring you in on a different day with what's going on there. A lot of milk jugs from my winter sowing. Again, I do need to start taking plants out of the milk jugs, and I'll show you my process for doing that in a separate video. As we head away from the long flower bed, There's this little tucked in hidden area here. Under that tarp is finished compost that I made last year. I'm excited. I have a lot of it and I'm going to be using it in a number of projects. I also like to make my own potting mix and I use my own compost for that. And then I have a compost bin here and I will be heating up that compost that's in there from last year. I want to wait though until I've used up a majority of last year's compost. So once I've used up a good amount of that compost, I'll show you my process for heating up an existing compost pile. Right near the compost pile are a bunch of my potted spring bulbs. I want to show you them. They're hidden in this corner because many of them have actually already bloomed and gone by. So I don't want to keep them out and be looking at them because at this point they just need to absorb the sun's energy to feed the bulbs for next year. But that's why they're tucked over here. And I'm letting them basically die back naturally. And once they've died back naturally, I'll show you in a future video my process for lifting the bulbs and what I end up doing with them. I will share with you that I had some successes and I had some failures when it comes to potting up spring bulbs in containers. I will share in a future video my new process for potting up spring bulbs, so be on the lookout for that. So let's head out of this area where my compost pile is. We're going to turn the corner and you can see my drop spreader is out. We put down some lime on the lawn and that just helps make it greener and it helps with moss and all sorts of fun stuff. So we're going to now head this way. We're still on the south side of my house and I'm going to slowly pan you around this way. Let's head over to my porch and I want to show you the two containers that we had put together a little while ago. It was just a simple little arrangement that we did that cost no money. And this plant right here, it's looking a little sad. This is a vinca vine. We've had some cold nights, so it's not very happy with me, but that's okay. It should bounce back. And then look at those pretty little pansies. They are just plants that basically they dropped their seeds last year and then they popped up this year. Some people might call them Johnny Jump Ups, but I call them pansies. I think they're so pretty. And we just stuck them in here. So it was just a freebie little container pot that we put together. And we did the same thing on this side as well. Isn't that the sweetest little thing? Right next to the side walkway bed is another flower bed, a very small one. I'm going to take you in for a closer look. I call this the old arborvitae bed. I used to have 3 arborvitae that used to be in this bed, and then we removed them and we turned it into a little more of a formal space. There are a bunch of things in here. We have candy tuft. I have it in this flower bed as well as the side walkway bed. And they should be blooming sometime soon. You can see that there are a bunch of the glory of the snow. And in fact, I had just planted these last year. I took them from existing little clumps that I had in my yard, divided them, and just moved them in here. And I like them because they just had that little spring pop of color that this flower bed was lacking. I'm always looking around my yard, spring, summer, and fall, and if there's a space that's lacking color, I try to take the color from another area and add it into the bed that's lacking the color, just to give it a little bit of interest as we wait for other things to wake up. And when the glory of the snow goes by, the candy tuft is all budded up, and then it will have a nice, beautiful white color to it. Look how lush the foliage looks. Once the candy tuft goes by, as hard as it is, I'm going to prune this back really hard this year, because if I don't do that, it tends to have a little bit of a wild growth habit to it. In the center, there is a juga, or bugleweed, and it is just waking up. But pretty soon it's going to be throwing out some beautiful purple blooms. And then in the center of this bed, there are a number of small rhododendrons. They are all budded up. So I want you to notice in this small little bed, we have some color right now. And once that purple color goes by, the ajuga will bloom. And also the rhododendrons will bloom. And once those go by, it'll be time for me to start planting all my summer annuals in here. My average last frost date is still about 2 weeks away, if not a little more actually. So I need color in these flower beds as I wait to plant my summer annuals. I do want to share that this spring, as the glory of the snow was blooming, I noticed that I didn't have any over here or over there. So what I did was I went to areas where the glory of the snow was just randomly popping up. I dug them up and I put them in here. And that's something I'm just constantly doing in the springtime, especially with the spring bulbs, is just digging them up. Even if they're blooming, it's fine. I dig them up and I move them where I want them. I notice right here there's a small little sprig of a patch. I'll probably add more here because clearly those didn't bloom this year. So I need to add some bigger bulbs in here, and I'll pull them from other areas where glory of the snow is growing and I don't want it to grow. We're going to head away from the south side of my house and we're going to go towards the backyard. This is the east side of my house. If you're new to my channel, you'll see that I live in a very wooded area. Lots of woods. So sometimes it can be challenging, but I feel with gardening, we should be up for the challenge. Let's work around what we have, be it lots of woods, shade, deer pressure. I think you can really do a lot just by being creative and thinking a little outside the box. Right here next to my barn is a hosta garden. And this area is usually packed with a ton of hosta. The hosta are just barely waking up. And some of the early rising hosta are just coming up now. I love seeing that. I love seeing the hosta just start to wake up. Towards the front of the hosta garden, you can see that I have more glory of the snow. And then I just have a few random daffodils that are budded up. At the base of the hosta garden are pulmonaria or lungwort. And look how beautiful they look. They just have a nice spray of purple blossoms going on right now. It's nice having all these blooms this time of year. We still have temperatures that are in the high 30-degree Fahrenheit range at night, but it's important to have as many blooms as possible because the pollinators are here and they're looking for food. I have some more fringed bleeding heart in this flower bed. And then I also have a number of Hellebore. They are looking beautiful, even though I need to cut back last year's foliage. And I just love their color. And that's what this Hellebore looks like right here. Isn't that just so striking? I've mentioned in many of my videos, I love to propagate plants as much as I can. And that's what I did with these Hellebore. Hellebore can be very expensive, so it's always nice to be able to divide the Hellebores that we have, just to get more free Hellebores. So pretty. In this garden tour, I'm not going over every single plant that's in all the flower beds. I'm just trying to highlight the flowers that are currently blooming, just to give you an idea of what's blooming in my 5B garden here in New Hampshire, where my average last frost date is around May 15th. So we're going to head away from this area here, and we're going to continue going towards my backyard. As we head towards the backyard, we're heading towards the north side of my house. In the distance, you can see I have a forsythia that's blooming. And I love having it there because it just basically anchors the corner of my backyard. I wanted to bring you in closer to the forsythia that is here in the backyard. So pretty. In fact, I have another forsythia that's blooming in the very corner of my backyard, as well as some random daffodils that you can see. Here in the very back part of my yard, together we planted this a few years ago. This is Creeping Jenny. It is considered invasive here in New Hampshire. I planted it here just as an experiment. It hasn't crept all the way out into the woods, which is good because I didn't want it to necessarily do that. But you can see it tries to creep into my lawn. Again, it was an experiment. I wanted to see how it would look. I do like it. I think it looks pretty here because this is a tough area of my yard and I wasn't sure what to do. So it was a small experiment that I tried. And someone asked me recently if it's possible to plant spring bulbs amongst the Creeping Jenny. And here you go. That just gives you an example. It is possible. Something that I also tried a few years ago was planting some daffodils at the base of this rock. And I do think it looks very sweet. I'm enjoying it here. And this was the first year that a few of them bloomed. And I think the daffodils look really pretty next to the moss, I think is what it is, on the rock. On the other side here in my backyard, there's a whole different story. There are a lot of blooms happening. And I basically have treated this side of my garden, of my yard, I guess I would call it, as holding bed because I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do in my backyard. It's not an area that gets full sun. It gets sun, but not full sun. So I've planted a whole bunch of different spring bulbs that I can then pick from and dig them up and move them to different areas of my yard. I'm pretty sure this one is called Replete. So on a different day, I will be digging up all of these daffodils and I will be moving them to other areas of my yard. This area needs to be weeded, it needs to be cleaned up, and then I want to think really hard about what I'm going to put in this area of my yard. But how exciting. I have a lot of daffodils I can play with. When you have a whole bunch of foliage like this patch here and no blooms, that is your indicator. Either there's not enough sun, that the bulbs are too tightly packed in and they need to be divided, or a little bit of both. So don't worry, little daffodils. I'll be digging you up and I will be moving you, don't worry. But until then, we might as well enjoy what we have in here. I'm pretty sure that these are still opening up. Probably tomorrow they'll put on their really good show. We're gonna head this way and you can just see they are in their glory. All of these yellow daffodils. I can never get bored of yellow daffodils. There are so many different kinds of daffs out there, so many different pretty variations of it, but there's nothing like the good old classic daffodil. I love these because of their vibrant yellow color. I love these because they face upwards. They just look so pretty. Right now, it's early morning, they're looking for the sun, but you can just see how pretty they are. I've said this for the last few years, but I think this is the year I want to tackle this area. Even if I don't plant anything in there, what I'd like to do is just come in here and clean up towards the front half of this bed. Basically where the lawn ends, I want to divide and move a whole bunch of daffodils while still keeping a whole bunch in here. There are a bunch of daylilies behind them. I want to divide and move those. Then right behind those are a bunch of peonies. And then what I want to do is, I know I have some perennials that are still left over that are tucked in this area. I've really gone and dug up a whole lot of those perennials. I did a lot of that last year. I need to come in here. I need to finish my job with digging up plants. And then I think what I might do, just for this year, is put down cardboard and put down compost and just let this bed rest as I think about what I want to do in this area. Because what I don't want to do is let a lot of the weeds go to seed. So it might just be a year of rest, but I want to reclaim this area of my yard. And I want to show you the other side, this angle, looking at the daffodils. Because you know how it is, it's just a matter of time and these daffodils will have gone by. So we just have to take it in. And I suggest you do the same thing in your gardens. Walk around and just take it all in. Because in a blink of an eye, certain plants, they don't bloom anymore until the next season. So you want to enjoy them while they are blooming. I can tell you I've really been enjoying these daffodils. I really have. I'm off to a slow start when it comes to planting a lot of my vegetables this year, but it will happen. I want to show you what's in the center here. They are waking up. That is asparagus. I have a ton of asparagus in this bed. I want to say it's 4, maybe 5 years old. Last year I really enjoyed the asparagus. They are still waking up. There's a lot in here, and it goes almost to the end of this bed. And I've mentioned it before, this area will be seeing a lot of changes this year when the time permits. Close by to the raised vegetable garden is what I call the rose garden. And I just need to come in here, I need to edge, I need to cut back my roses and fertilize them. And they are just barely starting to wake up here. So I'm not late in doing it. I'm definitely not late at all in doing it, because if you look carefully, you can see that they're just starting to show a little bit of green growth at the bottom. So I will come in here and take care of that, give the roses some fertilizer. Not a lot of work to do in this bed, just a little bit of basic maintenance. And the spring bulbs at the base were just added again during the last maybe 1 year to 2 years, because I noticed I was waiting. I was waiting for the daffodils in the center to bloom. Once again, they're a later type of daffodil. They bloom later. And I was waiting for the roses, of course, to do their thing. So I needed some color in here. So the first thing that bloomed in here were some crocuses. And then the crocuses went by. And now we have a wonderful display of the glory of the snow. And once the glory of the snow goes by, about that time is when the daffodils will bloom. Once the daffodils have gone by, then hopefully the roses will start. And around that same time is when I'll be planting my summer annuals. So we're going to head away from the rose garden, and I want to show you some really pretty things that we'll find on this side of my house. I want to show you that the peonies are waking up for the year. I love peonies. I can never get enough of them. So when we head in this direction here, a number of trees were cut down during the winter months, and it really opened things up. I'm excited to see how much sun this area actually gets this year. I did come in here during the late winter months, and I started really cleaning and weeding this area. This is an area I'd like to focus on this year. And I want you to notice, when I say I want to focus on an area, it's basically from around here to up to this tree here. And I think that's a realistic goal, to try to make that area look really pretty this year. Because if I were to say to myself, I want to do all of that and I want to work on that bed there, I don't think that's a realistic goal. If I get to it, that's fine, but I'm not planning on it. I really just want to focus on this one area here. You can see that it has a lot of beautiful spring color in there. Let me take you in for a closer look. So we have a nice little patch of these daffodils here that are looking wonderful. And towards the front, there is a ton of heuchera, or coral bells. And I've just divided and moved these along over time. So I just need to come in and clean those up. And then this right here is a quince, flowering quince. And in fact, it's budded up, and when we do our next garden tour, I should be able to show you how beautiful it looks when it's blooming. Towards the back of this flower bed, there is an assortment of random beautiful things. What I want to do is just take you in closer to show you some of the random beautiful things that are here. We'll start with the small leaf rhododendron. I'm pretty sure those are buds that are on there. One thing I will say is it's a little shady in this area. I believe that this would do better in a little more sun, so I am planning to move it to a sunnier location of my yard. I have an azalea, and you can see that it's just starting to push out a little bit of color. So probably when we do our next garden tour, this will be blooming. Here is a bridal wreath spirea, and it is just budded up. In a number of places in my yard, I have the Miss Kim lilacs. And if they're not Miss Kim, they're very similar. They're basically lilacs with the smaller leaves on them. This is all budded up. This is called flowering almond, and you can see it's going to have a beautiful pink color to it. This is pushing out growth, and I can't remember the name of it for the life of me. I'm going to put it up on the screen, but I have a bunch of this in my yard. And when it blooms, it's so pretty. As we head to the front yard, I just love this view right here. Even the tree stumps, I think, look pretty. I could put some little pots on there and make it look really whimsical. But look at the display of all the daffodils in the distance. Let's head that way. Let's head to the front yard. But first, I want you to notice this beautiful plant combination. We have the daffodils, and at the base of the daffodils is European wild ginger. It's just such a pretty ground cover. I love it so much. And if you have this plant, I bet you didn't know, it actually puts out a beautiful little bloom. It's not known for its bloom, but that little red thing that you see there, that is the bloom on the wild ginger here. We're just heading towards the front of my yard, and that is the west side of my house that we're heading towards. Things are still waking up, but while we wait for things to wake up, it's so nice to have this nice spring color in the yard. And I do want to point out in this one particular flower bed, there are daffodils here. That's the foliage that you see there. And the reason they're not blooming is pretty much every year I come in whenever I can and divide daffodil bulbs. And clearly when I divided them and moved them here, they were bulbs that were on the smaller side. And that's why they're not blooming. But I am a patient gardener. I'm willing to wait. I feel that, we just can't always get our gardens looking beautiful in one day or in one year. It might take a number of years. I'm okay with that, especially on the budget that I'm on when it comes to dividing my plants. Sometimes we just have to wait, but it's worth it. It's definitely worth waiting for. The sun is really shining on this little hellebore here, but I just had to show you. Look how pretty it is, even with the sun shining down on it, coming through the leaves. So pretty. We're going to head in this direction here. I've been creating flower beds where the lawn ends and where the woods begin for about the last 5 or 6 years. And the beds are constant work in progress. It's fun. It's fun looking at the light condition, the soil condition, and just seeing where plants thrive and where plants maybe don't thrive and where I need to move them. I do want to show you another hellebore that's blooming right here. And that's a really pretty face to that one as well. When you're in the front yard and you're just peeking around the corner in the backyard, this is what it looks like, just to give you a different angle. Now, a lot of this area has hostas in it. Since we had trees cut down, it'll be interesting to see how the hosta do. It is on the north side of the house, so I'm guessing they should do okay, but you just never know. Time will tell. We're going to head down to this little pocket right here. The daffodil that are here are really putting on a great show this year. I would say this is the best year so far. There are mostly two different faces, I would call them, to the daffodils. They're either the light colored, yellow colored flowers or the orange center with a yellow outer border. I space them out enough so that they can make an impact in their little clumps. And I just have a little bit of a pattern going when it comes to spacing them out. And then a few years ago when I divided my Muscari or Grape Hyacinth, I placed them on either side of the groupings of daffodils, just to add that little pop of purple. And I really am enjoying the Muscari. They're still quite small, their groupings are not as big, and that's fine. They're still quite young. I had mentioned there were two different colors of the daffodils in here. There's a third. There's yellow, just plain old yellow. And I'm okay with the variation in colors of the daffodils. All of these daffodils were daffodils that I dug up in an area that where my mother-in-law had put them. So it really was just random. I didn't know what to expect when it came to the blooms. And honestly, I'm enjoying their randomness in this flower bed. As we continue along the way here, I had given you a little glimpse of this as we peeked over from the driveway. And this flower bed I like to call the lilac flower bed, and because it has a lilac tree right in the center there. Towards the back, those are yucca. I need to come in and just do some basic maintenance on the yucca. Towards the front, there's a whole bunch of different things. Like I mentioned, in this video, I just want to focus on what's blooming right now. So you can see that we do have some grape hyacinth in here. A couple of years ago, I just went and divided a whole bunch of the Muscari or grape hyacinth. So they are just barely putting on a show in this flower bed. You can see them just, the purple color. And then towards the back of the bed are a whole bunch of daffodils that are looking wonderful. My husband and I limbed up a few trees in this area to allow for more sun to come in. So it'll be interesting to see this year the sun conditions in this flower bed. I'm hoping that it gets a little more sun than it has in the past. You can see the impact spring bulbs make, especially in gardens that are slow to wake up. I highly recommend you do that with your bulbs. If you have spring bulbs, divide them and move them around. If you have a flower bed where you're waiting for it to wake up, then it's worth it. And spring bulbs, just like any other perennial, benefit from being divided every 3 to 5 years. I am thankful for the little patches of purple that I have here towards the front. Because like I mentioned, I noticed there wasn't a lot of color in this flower bed. So I'm always looking out for that. And as we leave the lilac bed, we're back at the driveway bed. And I already showed you what that looked like. But let's head up the hill here in my front yard. So here in the front yard, which again is on the west side of my house, this bed here is what's called the bay window bed because of the bay window that you see there. I had told you in a previous garden tour that one of the first perennials to bloom in my yard is this yellow perennial here. And this is called Leopard's Bane. I joke with anyone that sees it when they come visit because it kind of looks like a marigold. but it also looks like a yellow daisy. So I'd like to believe it looks more like a yellow daisy. And I'm noticing right now, look at that, I have a seedling. I have many seedlings of lupin in this yard. I'm actually considering leaving them as is. And the reason is they don't love to be transplanted. And quite honestly, I just don't have time right now to deal with it. I'd love to transplant them. I've done it before and moved them successfully, but I might just leave them as is and let them do their thing because there's just so many in this bed. And I think that's a good problem to have, right? When it comes to lupin. Last year, I also added some of the Muscari or Grape Hyacinth in this bed as well. As you might know, purple complements very nicely with yellow on the color wheel. And I thought that that would look really pretty because they do bloom at the same time. So you can see that there's quite a bit of a little pattern going on here that repeats itself. And even though the Muscari is still very small, give it time. I bet 2, if not 3 years from now, it's going to really look pretty here. But I am enjoying the yellow that we have in this bed. One reason I try not to add a ton of daffodils in this flower bed is I want to really just let these yellow flowers make the impact in the bed. I don't want the yellow of the leopard's bane to fight with the yellow that you would find on a daffodil. I say that, but I do have a small patch of daffodils in here. And well, for right now, they can stay. I mean, why can't they stay, right? Look how pretty that is. In this flower bed are a couple of nice mature patches of lupin, and they should be putting on a wonderful show later this season. Be on the lookout. In a future video, I'm going to show you my process for pruning back my Montauk daisies and taking cuttings to propagate them so we can have more plants. The time has come to start cleaning the pond up. So hopefully within the next week, I'm going to tackle that. Up along the walkway, as we end this tour, I just want to show you some pretty things. We have the beautiful Grape Hyacinth. These are the big patches that I have that I've basically been pulling from and dividing these because you can see they're quite mature. I also have a lot of the white bloodroot, and I love that combination of the white, the purple, and then the pink of the corydalis. And I'll be coming in here soon enough and dividing a bunch of these plants to move around in different areas of the yard. And there are also some hyacinth that are out here in the front yard. But I really love the color combination that we see here. And even though there's no yellow right here, you can see in the distance, that's where the yellow is of the leopard's bane. And there's plenty of yellow in the pansy holding bed. Look at all the different colors. We have whites, purples, yellow, and even if there's no pink, there's pink in the distance there. I'm enjoying all the different colors that you see right here. Look how pretty that is. If you have any questions or comments with anything you saw in this video, please drop them down in the comment section below. I love hearing from you. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.